Hello there, I'm Randy Cross, and this is Unsafe Spaces, Season 2, Episode 7. Got a little of the normal kind of things for you, little sports news, little feel-good story, such and such. Also have a nice little interview for you with Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator at the Naval Academy. And for those that have watched this podcast and heard the story in general about Ivan and his son Jaron and their family's struggle over these last 6 to 12 months with his recent heart transplant, as we documented last week on the podcast, we'll be talking to Coach Jasper here in a little while. But first of all, I want to thank you for grabbing the podcast here. Remind you that you can get that at unsafespacesusa.com, randycross.com, various other places. Any suggestions you may have for the podcast, very important. Producer at unsafespacesusa.com. Love to get as much input as we can from all of you. Just sort of getting started here. I was reminded this week, it's been 6 years since I lost a really good friend, a great teammate by the name of Freddie Solomon. Many of you may not really remember him or have heard of him, perhaps. I would hope football fans remember him. He was on the first two Super Bowl teams that I was on in 81 and 84 seasons. University of Tampa, great guy that they don't have a program anymore, but guys like he and John Matuzak really put that program on the map. Freddie was an unbelievable option quarterback, and as good as he was a football player, he was an even better person. And 6 years ago, we lost him to cancer. And I just want to sort of remind myself of his favorite saying. He always used to say to people, say to kids, the last kind of thing he left them with was be better. And when I think of Freddie Solomon, I think of always being better. Miss you, Freddie. Wish you were still with us. All right, next thing up, a news story that really caught my eye this last week. A lot of things about traumatic brain injury. You've heard things here on the podcast about concussions and how the NFL is dealing or not dealing with it, how college football is dealing or not dealing with it. Chris Nowinski, who we talked to a couple weeks ago, mentioning the whole, no contact football until 14 years old, that players should play flag football, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Well, this story that came out, pretty incredible. There's a company out there by the name of Banyan Biomarkers that have come up with a blood test that will tell people, or medical people involved, doctors, that there's been a traumatic brain injury. Now, is it the ideal timeline as to from testing to result? No, you'd like it almost instantaneous, because as of right now, it's about 20 minutes. But check out this video. It's going to tell you all you need to know, and this is a fantastic breakthrough in studying of traumatic brain injury and concussions.
Known as the Banyan Brain Trauma Indicator, the test looks for two proteins that are released into the bloodstream by the brain following a blow to the head that causes visible lesions to form. In its largest trial, the test was compared to CT scans, long considered the gold standard in concussion detection, and successfully predicted someone having tissue damage 97.5% of the time. According to a report by Gizmodo, it is estimated that the test could reduce the need for further CT scans in up to a third of suspected concussion patients.
Just want to emphasize something really, really important. That's obviously a brain, and they're depicting an injury. There is no finish line in this, because we won't get to a point, at least in our lifetime, where there's any kind of a definitive cure for this ever happening. But any way you can make this game safer, any way you can make the decision-making process for parents and kids and participants easier, you're improving the game. You're making the game better. And bringing this to people's attention doesn't mean someone doesn't like the game or has a grudge for the game. I'll emphasize again, this makes the game better and maybe even makes it a little bit safer. Coming up next, we're going to have the interview of the week, and that's going to be with Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator of the Naval Academy and father of Jaron Jasper, recent heart transplant recipient. Alrighty, as mentioned previously, we're joined now by Ivan Jasper, offensive coordinator for the Naval Academy, and I guess with all the news around Jaron's transplant and his whole experience this last year or so, it's almost like you're his dad is your main title now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a long process. Obviously, we still got some ways to go, but it's good being where we are now. He's doing well. He's back home, and again, it's just it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. Having him at home now, and no more wires to plug into, no more batteries. So again, it just feels good to be dad again.
And it all basically started, if you don't mind sort of going over this again, it really started with a physical, which every kid who plays organized sports, especially football, should take, and and something showing up in that, right?
Yes, it's basic physical he went in for, and the doctor, she didn't like the sound of his heart, so obviously she referred him to a cardiologist, and we took him to a cardiologist, and then he listened to it as well. Gave him a stress test, gave him a 24-hour Holter monitor to wear, and he didn't like it as well. So then he sent him to an electrophysiologist, and his job is to check the electrical parts of the heart, the function of the heart, and that's where he decided that it needed to be fixed, and then obviously went in to get it fixed, and then obviously that's when the complications happened.
And the whole process from start to transplant was it about a year? Am I right with that?
No, it was in August. It was almost right at 6 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right at 6 months. August 4th was the day that he went in for the catheter ablation, and then he got his transplant January 30th, and I guess February 4th would have been 6 months exact. So a little under 6 months.
Having the privilege of being around the Naval Academy football team quite a bit, it has really impressed me, because you guys are a family first and foremost. Before any of this ever happened, that was my impression. But man, has that been reinforced?
Obviously, that's one thing that Kenny's always preached. First and foremost about the football program, about us as coaches. Obviously, we're husbands and fathers first, and the same way we treat our players as if they were our own sons. How we want our kids being treated by coaches. So that's always been the main case here is family first. Take care of these young men as if they were our own. Now, obviously, for me, when this happened to my kid, that everybody just basically, all wheels were turned, to support of my family, and mainly Jaron, and get them through this. So again, it's just been exhibited. The family, the love, the support has been tremendous, and I just can't say enough about not just from our staff, but from the community, from our fans, and from all the other coaches around the country, and other people who've shared the same kind of situation. Support from them as well. So it's just been wonderful.
Is there any one thing you take away from that outpouring? What you've sort of, I guess, learned in a lot of ways, in a positive aspect about people in general?
Well, obviously, being in the CICU, there are other families there that have that are going through the same thing. But we all came together because we're all going through the same thing. Just the support for each other, the love, and again, just nothing mattered. Color, race, or anything didn't matter. It's just we're all going through the same thing. You kind of wish the world was that way. Obviously, it's unfortunate, something like we have to be in a situation where things aren't going great, for each family, for things like that to come together, but you wish the world can be like that, where just nothing matter, where we just, you loved your brother for who he is, your neighbor for who they are. It doesn't really matter, but again, that's just the one thing, that we've taken from this whole situation is that, being able to see someone going through the same exact thing that you're going through, and being able to embrace them and feel their pain and support them as well. Because again, it was a tough situation for us to be in. And in the 6 months that we were, dealing with the CICU, there was, a handful of babies and two teenagers that didn't make it, so it just really makes, Jan's situation and being able to receive a transplant, you appreciate it a lot more. Because again, I mean, there were some unfortunate cases there where, some babies and two teenagers didn't make it, so we're just thankful. Again, just glory to God first, and just thankful to the donor family, that they made the choice to donate life.
Yeah, I mentioned that last week in podcast because we went over, we actually showed the pictures of you and the family and some of the people from the hospital in front of the banner for the donations, for the, giving organs
Yes.
group. And that's something I did, I guess last time I did my license, here in the state of Georgia, I just checked that box, and it just seemed like a natural thing to do. But how many people really don't know how easy that is?
I mean, it's like you say, you do it unconsciously, but it's so important that that the awareness be made more. People got to become more aware of just doing donation. Because again, we've been there again for 6 months, and just seeing, just even donating blood is a tremendous thing to do. Donating plasma definitely is important. So again, the awareness just has to be raised for everyone, just to be able to, make the decision, that to become a donor. Because again, I mean, it's one thing to be able to check a box on your driver's license, but also to be able to, if the situation does come where someone needs an organ, and just having that feeling that, if something happens to someone and you can't bring them back, you can't save them, but to be able to save a life, I mean, it definitely makes things more meaningful, a life more meaningful, that they were able to have someone that's life be able to be extended, because of that, so it's something that, again, that we've learned. Obviously we've benefited from it. Again, we're just so thankful again that, that Jan was able to receive a heart.
So he's home. He's, like you said, he's not hooked up per se, and putting weight back on. I know that was an issue early on, through most of the process.
Yeah, he had lost a lot of weight, but right now he went in at 122 when it all happened. He got down to like 95. Right now he's back up to 128. And some of it's due to the steroids that he's on. He's gained some weight, kind of in his face and around his stomach. He definitely doesn't like that, but it's just part of the process. There's a lot of medication that he's on right now, and over the next months and the years, as he gets better and gets stronger, they will start to wean him off those other medications that are causing some side effects. Then it'll come down to just maybe a handful of medication that he needs to take. But right now, he's doing well. He gets sleep in his own room. He gets up and walks around the house and eats breakfast, and he goes and plays his video games, and he's still doing his schoolwork. Today we have a tutor coming at noon to catch him up on what he's missed since he's been in the hospital. So right now we're in a good place right now, and just looking to push forward.
For you, Ivan, a football coach is a very consuming job for people that don't understand how much time there is. It's not just football, it's recruiting, it's everything else. Will your job ever be kind of normal from now on?
I would like to think so. And our goal is to get back, we want our lives to be as normal as it can possibly be. Again, and that's the goal, for us to get back to our normal lives, for Jan to be able to go back to school, to be able to play sports, to be able to run around and, play any sport he want, football, stuff that we might have to talk about. But other than that, we want to get back as normal as it possibly can. And for me and my job, obviously, last year wasn't a great year for us, especially on offense, and again, just for me personally, that's always, I take that upon myself. That's my responsibility, and again, I'm not using anything as an excuse. We just didn't have a great year, so my focus is to get us back to where we were before, to be more efficient, obviously to to be better in the red zone, to take care of the football. To just do a great job of that last year. And there's no excuse about it. We need to get better. And, so for us moving forward, again, for me personally in my life, my family, is just to be normal. And my job wise is to be the same. I don't think anything should change. I want to be the same as it's always been.
Well, Coach, God bless you and your family and the whole Navy football family. So happy for you and everyone else that Jaron's come through this, and everyone has truly been Jaron strong.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Randy.
All right, Ivan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you to Coach Jasper, and congratulations to you and the family, and best of luck to you, your family, and the whole Navy football family. Time for a little sports now. All right, a couple weeks after the Super Bowl, and if you've got your sports calendar in front of you, something very important in sports happens, and it's their sports Super Bowl, and that's NASCAR. NASCAR starts off with their biggest event, and that's the Daytona 500. Austin Dillon won it in the number 3 car 20 years after Dale Earnhardt had won that same race. Just an incredible symmetry. The team had an amazing experience in general. He won the race. Having watched a lot of it, I'll remember this race for 2 things. Austin Dillon won, and for some of these, you call them what? Incidents? If you ain't rubbing, you ain't racing. If you ain't bumping, you ain't racing. I don't know, some Ricky Bobby term. Check this out.
Jones did not.
Come on.
His teammates Suarez, William Byron, Jimmy Johnson are all in it along with Ty Dillon.
Trevor Bayne was able to weave his way through there.
Big push coming from Elliott and Keselowski. Contact! Elliott slam into the wall.
Are you kidding me?
Danica the wind out of Chase Elliott.
Yeah, that was
Elliott Kane. Here's Danica Patrick.
That was Danica Patrick's last race, by the way, as a professional race car driver.
And you see.
Kurt Busch! Around off the bumper of Blaney.
Inside. Collector inside. You should be the leader.
looks like
Truex not able to avoid this one. Or Bowman.
Number 3, 20 years ago. 20 years of trying for Earnhardt.
Wow.
He won the Daytona 500. Austin Dillon wins the 60th running of the Great American Race. Turning the number 3 to victory lane, and he just did a slide to replicate what Dale did when he won it in the 3 20 years ago. How fitting, how special.
That's fantastic for that whole team. An amazing experience, I'm sure, for the whole Earnhardt family. It was really an experience. That's always a great event, and Dillon winning it in that number 3 car made the whole event even more special. Also, another sporting event that comes up this time of the year is the NBA All-Star Game. And I guess when you market things, you're always trying to make things just a little more appealing. And the All-Star Game was in LA, so you had a lot of pop, a lot of sizzle, a lot of star participants. Well, they came up with 2, I was going to say great ideas, but you got the draft, the players, captains drafting. Steph Curry and LeBron James were the captains. They get to draft their team. Okay, that's a good idea. 2 other ideas didn't work out quite as well. One was Kevin Hart doing the intros, and the other one was Fergie doing the national anthem. Let's check out some video here on both those.
I do have the skills to be an all-star host, and I do have the skills to make an all-star introduction in my introduction voice. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 2018 NBA All-Stars.
That was the bit that wouldn't die. Funny guy. Pretty good actor. Love him with Dwayne Johnson. Does some good work with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, for those of you that have been under a rock the last 10 years or so. But, man, that really didn't work. And if you notice that didn't work, you probably noticed that this didn't work. Oy. It's going to get worse.
Can you see by the dawn's early light
Left the rails.
what so proud
Congratulations to Andrew Doyle and Ray Hams back there. That was pretty good. The cat screeching, and that's exactly what that national anthem sounded like, and that's the analogy it deserved. Boy, was that a dull splat of an idea. Game was normal for an all-star game. You know, they almost score about 150 points, and it comes down to the last shot, and there's no defense, and it's an all-star game. Whether you play it at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, or the end of the year, there's very few redeeming qualities about an all-star game. The good news is, at least this all-star game doesn't determine, like baseball, sort of home team in the World Series. At least they keep its place in the proper perspective when it comes to all-star games. Something else that happened this week finally came down. News of it happened, I guess actually a couple of weeks ago, that the appeal had been denied. But the NCAA upheld their taking the title away from University of Louisville from the 2013 season. They're stripping the banner. They're stripping the championship away from Rick Pitino and the Louisville Cardinals from that team, raising that trophy, raising that banner shortly thereafter. And some things just don't age well, especially when you're an older guy and a coach. And no, that tattoo, as it proves now, that didn't exist. It didn't happen. He's got it, but it just didn't happen. Louisville is not the national champions for that year. And again, just to remind you, the NCAA did a whole investigation, and this whole thing about strippers / hookers / parties that were thrown on campus during 2012 to 14, that time frame. That'll do it. And it did it in this point. Next up on the sports window is something that's been going on now for about a week and a half, and that's the Winter Olympics. And the premier events when it comes to the Winter Olympics, it's not the men's downhill, or it's not the bobsled, or it's not the half pipe. The premier thing in the Winter Olympics is always ice skating. And I basically wanted to isolate two of the gold medals that happened. One was on the men's side. The Japanese winner, Yuzuru Hanyu, who won 4 years ago, won again, becoming the first man to go back-to-back with gold since Dick Button back in the early 50s. Here's a little something on that performance. And, having watched a lot of this with my wife, Patrice, here over the course of the last week or so, it's stunning. And if you're a world-class skater or a pair, if you're one of the 30 best in the world at something, there shouldn't be this stark a difference between first and 30th. But, man, watching it in person, it just jumps out at you. That whether it's the men's single, the women's single, the doubles, the ice dancing, whoever, the difference between the top couple and everybody else, it's a Grand Canyon-sized chasm. In the second event that was done, you had Savchenko and Massett from Germany, and she was in her 5th Olympics, had never gotten a gold. And it all really came down to their final skate in the long program, and they pulled it out. Pretty special stuff.
The moment, why don't you?
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. And I tell you, as a kid that, grew up in Southern California and snow and ice weren't a big part of my life, I've always respected the hell out of anybody that could ice skate, period, much less play hockey and figure skate and everything else. And watching this, like everybody else in the world, basically every 2 to 4 years, just reinforces how special it is to be able to do some of the things these people can do on skates. A lot of fun. Hey, let's try now and go to a very special feel-good story of the week. And this week's feel-good story of the week is kind of leading up. It's college football's done, and there was only one real significant undefeated team. That was University of Central Florida. They were 14-0. They went 12-0 in the regular season. They won their conference championship game, and they won the Peach Bowl against Auburn. 14-0, undefeated. They've touted that as a national championship. Yeah, I don't care how you feel about this. You look at one of their players in particular, Shaquem Griffin. He's an outside linebacker, pass rusher. He was born with a congenital problem in his left hand. Left hand was basically removed, and he plays football. He's got so much heart. He's got so much intensity and devotion. If you don't just intensely make it a point to stare at his left hand when he's playing, you couldn't tell. And what's really been fun for me is as people have studied this kid getting ready for the draft, they don't see his missing left hand. They don't see any of that. Do you know what they see? They see a guy that can make plays like this.
To the outside for the first time. The ball is loose, picked up by Griffin, and he will go in for the...
They're rushing 4, and they're going to get to Ferguson. He is dropped.
And then college football playoff ranking as well. Into it.
In the last 7. That ball is out and loose, and it's recovered. Let's see.
Jump move here, the big tackle. He's giving up 100 pounds on Darius James. And he showed him.
Look at a rush 3. That's it. 8 in coverage. All sorts of time for Ferguson. Now being chased, and now he'll be dropped. Who else? Shaquem Griffin.
And perhaps not the case. They'll need to salvage it. Into one-on-one coverage. It's another turnover. Griffin's got it. Coming the other way. His big day continues.
Yeah, more than anything else, as people are starting to figure out, and that's a graphic from Pro Football Focus about where he ranks and some of his abilities. And this is just as a flat baller, because as a football player, he's as good as anybody out there. So don't look at the hand. Look at the whole player. And this is one of the best stories of this upcoming NFL draft that will be happening this May. And some NFL team is going to get really, really lucky to get Griffin on their team. His brother is currently on the Seattle Seahawks, and the family has one professional football player in it. Starting this May, they're going to have 2. Congratulations, Shaquem. Keep up the good work. All right. Want to say thank you to all of you for watching this week's episode. This is season 2, episode 7 of my Unsafe Spaces and remind you that you can find Unsafe Spaces a lot of different places. You can find it at unsafespacesusa.com. You can find it at randycross.com. You can find it on Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, all the way across the board. And again, any suggestions, producer at unsafespaces.com. Time for us to say happy trails.
Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds if we're together? Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather.